We're in the midst of a huge transformation where peers, communities, and workplaces are all really melding into one. Welcome to Reimagining Company Culture. My name is Christina Giuliano, she, her, and hers, and I'm the Senior Partnerships Manager here at AllVoices. Today, I am super excited to welcome our next guest onto the interview series, Liz Storti. She is the Chief People Officer at Path AI. Elizabeth, thank you so much for being here. If you want to share a little bit about yourself for our listeners, including your pronouns, and when you were younger, do you remember how exactly you answered the question, what do you want to be when you grow up?
Okay, well, thank you so much for having me today. I'm so excited to be here. My name is Elizabeth Storti, Chief People Officer at Path AI. My pronouns are she, her, and hers. I'm a mom of three wonderful kids. I'm kind of an unusual CPO. I'm a CPA. I spent my entire career in finance. And so we're going to talk a lot about that today and how that molded who I am today as a CPO. When I was asked what I wanted to be when I grew up, I almost always answered President of the United States, which is funny because I never actually ended up going into politics. But I really do like to be the boss. And so maybe it kind of all worked out.
I love that. I also loved being the manager or the boss of something if we were playing a game as well. Fast forward to today, you mentioned your experience in finance. How has your background in the industry really helped you in this kind of chief people officer role?
It's a great question. So it helped me in so many ways. Like I said, when I joined Path AI, I actually joined to oversee finance back in 2018. During my time at Path AI, we raised multiple rounds of fundraising, Series B and Series C. We did a large acquisition when we acquired a large anatomic pathology lab in Memphis to support our distribution channels, all while building financial infrastructure to support the scale of our business. When I joined Path AI, we were less than 20 people, which is a pretty unique type of experience for most people. And this year, we're about 750 people. And so as our revenue and operations grew, we really need to take a time to evaluate how we were going to support that team in the long term. So ultimately, I ended up moving over to build a new infrastructure. So first finance and then to people, really spending time to invest in our people and how we scale. And so we can talk more about, and we're going to, I know later on, about how that shaped the role and who I am today. But that's kind of how I got here in my position at Path AI. It was definitely an unconventional path for sure.
I love that. I appreciate you sharing your story and also the immense growth that the organization has had as well. I do want to talk about kind of that support element too, in terms of how you're showing up for the full lives of employees. We know this is something that folks really care about as well. 47% of employees in one study reported that their stress was higher than anything they'd previously experienced in their career, and only 37% agreed their organization really understood what they needed in their personal lives and for their families. How is Path AI showing up for the full lives of employees?
So even as we scale, I can say that we never really lost that startup feeling. And that really speaks to how we work, a little scrappy, really fast, but super nimble. But that can be a really challenging environment for a lot of people to work in. There's changing priorities. We're constantly weighing short-term and long-term solutions. And this pace is really unmatched from anywhere I've worked in my experience. But ultimately, our employees are what drive everything we do. I could say that we show up for our employees by giving them super robust benefits, which we do, holiday schedules, which are great, hybrid work policies, much like our peers, everything from daycare support to supporting them how they work at home. But if I'm going to be honest, I actually don't think that's really how you show up for your employees. It's actually something totally different. And really, it's about what's driving and focusing on why we're all here. And if we're super clear about the why, it just becomes so much more obvious for our team. And so at Path AI, why are we doing this? We're trying to improve patient outcomes. And we're doing that with technology and services. And if interested, I'm happy to talk more about kind of how we do that at Path AI and what we do. But it's really important that we thread that mission in everything we do, and that we work diligently to ensure our team both understands and connects to that mission. And when people do, they show up for you in a different way. And in return, you show up for them in a different way. So we are all working all in this critical mission that impacts us, our children, generations beyond that. And it's some of the most important work we can do. And then once we connect to the mission, which is the why we're here at Path AI, and how do we connect everything we do to that why, the second is to do that in a nimble way. And so, like I said at the beginning, it's core to who we are at Path AI to really be rooted in that startup culture. But part of that is being nimble, and also us at Path AI being nimble for our employees. And so, yes, a hybrid schedule is part of it, but also the how we work is the other part of it. And so, whether it's different schedules, whether it's mediums of how you celebrate, mediums of how you speak to each other, how you communicate different values. We spend a lot of time thinking about how do people show up in meetings. Some people are extroverted like I am. They're at the front of the table, their hands are going, they're loud. Some people like to write and they write memos. And so we try to create a culture that is open to all those types of different communication styles. We set agendas in meetings to allow for people that like to write ahead of time to provide input, and try to be thoughtful about nimbleness around how we work. And so I guess that's kind of the two big things that are important to us at Path AI. First, connect people to what we do and the why, and then make sure that we provide pathways for the how in a nimble and creative way so that people can show up for us in their best selves. And that's what all we can ask for our employees.
Absolutely. That mission, the reason why you show up to work every day, what you're working on 40 plus hours a week, it really contributes to the how, kind of your perspective and kind of your realm of influence on a day-to-day basis too. And I think that is so important. I
Absolutely.
think, one of the questions that a lot of folks are asking as well is in regards to that how, the workplace, how are you empowering folks to do their best work? From your perspective as a people leader and executive, what are qualitative and quantitative ways we can think about measuring this moving kind of dynamic thing of company culture?
Oh, okay. If anyone has the answer, feel free to email me separately with exactly how we should be doing this. But I don't think there's actually a perfect answer to how to do it. A lot of it's feel. So at Path AI, we're data driven. Finance, I'm a finance person. Data driven at my core first. And so we do this a couple different ways. The main way is we recently started an engagement survey that runs twice a year, and that creates a baseline of data. And so we ask very simple questions, 3 to 4 questions before we open up to anonymous commentary. How likely are you to recommend Path AI? Are you happy at Path AI? And then a couple other questions, which are 2 different questions. How likely are you to recommend and how you're happy? Startup people are often very happy, but this culture is not for everyone. And so sometimes they wouldn't recommend us. So that's a really interesting thing for us to watch closely. And then a couple other questions that are that help us measure different initiatives that we're doing. And so one of the questions this year is around diversity. Do you feel diverse perspectives are valued at Path AI? And then we're measuring that a couple different times during the year to make sure that what we're doing and focusing on is working. And so again, it's simple. It's 4 to 5 questions max. Try to keep it 3 to 4, but provide some baseline data for us. But for me, the most interesting part about that survey is the questions are helpful, but it's the anonymous comments. So we just recently did one a couple months ago. We got over 400 free form comments, and that actually is where a lot of the stuff is. And that really helps us get a feel for what's important. So sometimes the comments are super prescriptive, and maybe not exactly what we can talk about when we think about company-wide initiatives, but you can start to pull out themes as you read through them. You may read things like, my manager isn't communicating well, or I'm not exactly sure what I should be prioritizing every day. And you get 3 or 4 more of those, and you start to think a little bit more about how are we training our managers and how are we thinking about communication across the company. And so we try to get these different data points and then take them all, evaluate what we're currently doing on our roadmap to help grow and nurture culture at Path AI. And then to move a little bit as we go along, and remember, staying nimble, it's core to what we are, and helping us try to navigate how to create a culture of all of those things, the startup culture, nimbleness, and keeping us all focused on what's important. So we measure as much as we possibly can. A lot of it's gut feel at the end of the day, but making sure you're giving your employees a time and a space to give that feedback. And I really love that open response with no text field limit, because it just allows them to kind of dump everything they can think of. And then it's our job to kind of pull out different themes in there.
Absolutely. That unstructured data piece is also really important. These specific questions, not just how are you feeling, but I like your example of, do you feel like diverse perspectives are really valued at Path AI as well? And then allowing opportunity for folks to provide context around that too. I think it is really important to note you've got a lot of responses from kind of asking those questions too. And I think part of that is kind of building that foundation of psychological safety, demonstrating that you value and you're actually listening to folks too. Is there kind of an example of how you're using data, employee feedback in terms of any avenue or insights to really make a change, whether it's big or small?
Yes. And so I have one silly one and some better ones. So in our last engagement survey, we recently acquired an amazing company in Memphis. And so we hired them about a year ago. And we got the survey out, and a bunch of people told us that the break room tables were a little wobbly. And like 10 or 15 people free formed that into the form. And so it was an opportunity for us to use the data we received and buy some new break tables. So that was a silly small one, but again, a way that this information comes to us, and we're able to actually act on it in a really productive and quick way, and get people what they want. Sometimes I think employees are try to. It can be a challenge to figure out where to send your input and thoughts. And so that type of survey allowed them to ask for that, and we're able to really quickly provide better break room tables. So that was an easy win. And then some of the other things that we've been able to do this year, in the second half of the year after our engagement survey, reading all the results, we're actually doing a lot of leadership training. And so that was a big thing. We read again, no one said, we need leadership training. They said things like, I'm not clear on prioritization. I'm having trouble communicating. And so we're starting to hear those types of themes, and we say, okay, let's take a step back about where those things should be happening. And it really should be coming from their leaders. Why isn't that happening? Let's talk a little bit about toolkits. How are the people being trained? Have we taken a pause point to train people appropriately and consistently across the group as we've grown? And so we really try to take different times to do that. And this was a really awesome initiative that we've already started 3 or 4 different cohorts of training, gotten really great feedback on it. And so looking forward to continuing to iterate on that for next year. But those are a couple different things that we've done so far in the second half of this year.
I love all of those examples because I think it's important to offer folks kind of that opportunity, like you were talking about, to put feedback that they might not necessarily know kind of where to put it, but it does affect their experience kind of when they're taking a break from work, and also just overall too. And then providing other examples as well. One of the things you mentioned was how fast Path AI is really growing, which is also really exciting as well. So as you continue to grow to 750 plus employees, how are you intentionally thinking about scaling company culture as new folks are joining the organization and people are moving around as well?
Yeah, it's an interesting one. Again, if anyone has like the right answer, definitely let me know. I think we have the additional complexities of, during this massive growth, we also had a pandemic, and we're in the middle of a pandemic. We have other forces that change the way we work, change the way culture is at any company, and really how we define culture. I recently had a new hire join who asked me in Slack, what's the culture here? And I said, oh, interesting question, because there's really not an answer. You have to walk around into our office. You have to watch our Slack channels, and a lot of that culture is threaded in how we work, why we work. Again, different ways that we communicate to each other. All of those things, our culture is a part of all of those things. I think what's important for us as we grow, and one thing that we're trying to do right now, is to take a pause point and less focus on writing down the culture of Path AI, because again, I think it's one of those things that's really hard to touch. It's what we are and how we do it. And we're actually working right now on codifying and institutionalizing the ways of working, which really help define our culture. And so how do we think about decision making? We're Andy and I are really big believers on there's no such, very, very rarely, almost always. There's probably a few instances where I'm wrong, that decisions are truly a one-way door. So with that information, if you believe that most decisions are two-way doors, that would fall onto failing fast. Then just make it, because you can always move back or you can always change. But that to me is a way of working that really contributes to our culture, which is fail fast, move quickly. It's okay if you get it wrong, but learn from that and try it again. And so that's some of the things that we're going to be doing going forward. But mostly at kind of where we are today, it's more about just making sure that we're doing what our employees enjoy, which is Slack, keeping up with channels. We have cats channels that talk about their different cat costumes, and dog channels and parents channels, and making sure that people have avenues to talk to each other, really making sure that we're supporting whatever work structure fits for people and their teams, providing ability for people to come to the office, and when they come to the office, the appropriate ways to communicate, whether it's game rooms, whiteboarding sessions, discussion groups, really just making sure that we're here to support our company as the culture moves, because it's going to change. It's totally fine that it changes, as long as we're all changing together and it's still working for us. So that's kind of the different push and pull. But I'd love to know if you got any good answers on that otherwise, but I think that's kind of generally how we're thinking about it.
I think that we've heard like really kind of similar things in terms of codifying kind of the ways of working. I think when people talk about empowering folks to do their best work and success, what do you mean by success? What does that look like? Really empowering managers, people who are on the front lines, really doing the work as well. What does that mean to them? And really defining that, being really agile and open to that feedback as well. And really, when we're talking about empowering folks to do their best work, you can't do that without, in addition to that foundation, really ensuring folks feel like they belong as well. So definitely want to talk about kind of what are the ways that you're investing in the equity, diversity, and inclusion of the work environment at Path AI as well.
Oh, that's a great question. So I'm a big believer that as we talk, the listeners are going to hear the accountant in me, even though I'm in a people function. And so I'm very black and white when I think about different initiatives. Either we're going to do it and we're going to do it well, and we're going to talk about it, or we're not going to do it and we're not going to talk about it. But the number one thing we're never going to do here at Path AI is say we do something just to say we do it. And so I've only taken this role now a few months ago, but when it comes to DEI and B initiatives at Path AI, we've really spent a lot of time thinking about what is our baseline for data? How are we thinking about getting better? So similar to the engagement survey, some of the things that we're doing this year is really taking a step almost back and saying, okay, where are we today? Now that we are a large company, we recently acquired another business. What does that look like? What does that mean for our numbers? How are we evaluating different initiatives? Figuring out what does that look like, and then what are some steps forward? And so we have a small group, a council on DEI and B that is focused on getting our baseline correct, figuring out how do we want to define who we are today? What does that look like? What are some benchmarks that we're looking to move in, and how are we going to move those things forward? And we're also putting together an advisory council that next year are going to be taking some of the findings and the reporting and creating a roadmap on how to make these things better. If we don't understand our baseline, then these initiatives, yes, they're helpful, but how do we know if they're working? How do we know if they're actually moving the needle? And so really making sure that we understand where we're going, where we're coming from to decide where we're going, and thinking about those different types of initiatives that can get us there. And so I will say one thing I'm really proud about is that we actually did ask a diversity question this year about how people feel valued, and they feel that the diversified opinions are valued at Path AI. And across the board, across our entire consolidated company, we scored very high. So people are feeling as if that when they are here at Path AI, their diverse perspectives are received well and understood across the company, which is fantastic. But we are dealing with a lot of the same issues that tech companies are. We have underrepresented groups that we do not have enough across Path AI. Women are not represented at high enough value in tech. And so we're dealing with a lot of the same things that our tech companies are, but and I'll always be super transparent. This year for us is about figuring out what our baseline is, and and what's important from those baseline numbers and how we're going to make it better.
Absolutely. I think really understanding the foundation of what you're working with, the context, and I think that goes to goal setting as well in terms of where you want to be in the future, both making it aspirational, realistic, and rooted in data and numbers, and of course the why. I know that supporting women in tech is something that is really important to you and myself as well. How are you empowering other folks, other women in the field?
Oh, yeah, I could talk about this topic forever. I'm deeply passionate about it, and I wish I could do more. I'm a mom of 3 kids, and everyone has different pulls at home. That is my pull today, and it is definitely a big one. And so I spent a lot of my time focused on it. Actually, here at Path AI, we have a women's group here, very, very vocal and active group. And we spend a lot of time thinking about how we can at Path AI do better for everyone, our male counterparts and our female counterparts, everyone all together. And so I spent a lot of time in that group thinking about ways as a leader I can help elevate women in the group and elevate their voices. A lot of times I hear from just more generally from women, how do I get a seat at the table? You know, I've asked, I've tried, I can't get there. And so my kind of response to that and a big initiative of mine is for people to worry less about getting to the table and more about what they're going to say at the table. And so I spend a lot of my time working with people on my team and across Path AI to get people to be better public speakers. Let's learn how to write presentations. Let's take out gendered language in how we email and communicate. And so that when we are at the table, we have something to say. And I think a lot of people spend so much time focusing on the how am I ever going to get there, that they actually spend no time on what they're actually going to say when they get there. And so that's actually where that's kind of my main focus is. And it's been interesting. It's different things for different people. Like I said in the beginning, some people would like to sit in front of the room and have a loud voice and their arms are moving and they're happy doing that. Other people are writers. And so how do you help writers get things across? And so that's things like memo templates. How do you figure out getting to the point quickly? How do you describe those types of things? Really elevating people with yes and in meetings and those types of things. So we practice all of that at Path AI a lot. And that's kind of how right now in my time, how I'm elevating women in tech is I elevate people at Path AI.
I love that. I think that is so important and also goes back to that intentionality piece. Why are you doing this? And then relates to the how as well in terms of kind of the sphere of influence and the way you show up and modeling that behavior as a leader, as a mom as well. Is there anything that I didn't specifically ask you that you want to share with folks listening or underscore any kind of key takeaways about all the things that we discussed this afternoon?
I think that we talked a little bit about the beginning about the why. And for me at Path AI, so at Path AI, I can just give the 2-second elevator pitch because I think it's important to understand what we do to understand why it's important. So at Path AI, we leverage artificial intelligence on digital pathology, and that's really applied to the drug development life cycle, all the way through distribution on the other side. And our mission at our core is to improve patient outcomes. And I joined Path AI back almost 5 years ago now, in 2018, with the idea that I was going to help accelerate our mission. And now, fast forward years, we have done so much work towards that, and that's my why. I am deeply passionate about moving the needle here because I have children, and it is so important that I'm doing that. And so I think that as we're all thinking about these markets are crazy. We're thinking, everyone's thinking about their job and what does it mean for what's next. And even 8 months ago, it was a different dialogue than we're facing today. And so what I'd encourage listeners today is to really think about their why. And your why doesn't have to be directly tied to a mission that's saving patients. It is an amazing mission. And I feel so blessed to be at a company that can stand behind that mission. But you may be in fintech and maybe your mission is slightly different, but find out what connects you to your why, and then be deeply passionate about that. And it changes the way you work. It changes the reason you work. We're all here, unfortunately or fortunately, from more of our days than we are at home.
Yeah.
And so to love what you do, you're not always going to have great days. Sometimes you have bad days, but to love what you do makes it so worth it. And so I think that that would be my leaving thought for everyone is love what you do and be deeply passionate about it. Um, and spend all your time thinking about what you're gonna say. So make a difference, figure out what your thing is, learn about it, be super, super educated. And that's how we're going to move things forward. There's so much work to be done across our industry, across technology, and even broader. And it's all going to be done by our employees ultimately. And so, really finding a way to connect to those things, I think, will make all the difference.
I think those are great charges, calls to action to end our conversation. Elizabeth, thank you so much for being on Reimagining Company Culture this afternoon.
Great, thank you so much for having me.
Of course, and as a reminder for our listeners, we at All Voices, we really believe in employees and employers being seen, heard, and understood. I know it's a requirement for the business to really succeed overall. Have a great rest of your day, everyone.